Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Mark Ashton. I'll be hosting you today, and today we're hosting the management team from Solec, South Africa, and we're looking at the topic of the sun over Eskom. Can solar take you off the grid? And I think it's really topical at the moment, not just least because of the weather that we've been having recently, but I think if we look at a lot of the if we look at a lot of the news articles and a lot of the information that's out there in terms of solar issues, this really is topical. I mean, just to give you some context, over 200 people registered for this webinar. People are really interested in understanding how they can go about integrating a solar solution as part of their business and their work from home capacity. And I think that obviously the whole work from home thing has become incredibly topical. If you don't have access to reliable energy, you don't have access to the ability to work from home. So we're looking forward to hosting you. It's going to be a very interactive session. We're going to be working through some of the questions that were pre-submitted. We do have the team from Solec SA also handling Q&A facility. So if you'd like to submit questions via the Q&A facility, it will be made available and we'll be interacting with you there. We've got some pre-submitted questions that we're going to work through, and then we'll take some general questions. As I say, it's always nice to be able to interact with people and work out who finds these things the most interactive and interesting. So let's really enjoy ourselves for the next hour. Before we kick off, Rain, maybe give us some background information. Who is Solec? What did they work on? And what's your business about?
Hi, good morning all. Yes, Solec South Africa started in 2017. We were first just a contractor for EPC companies. We did quite a lot of work for Solar Africa and one or two other companies. We did the likes of Bowen Properties. We did all their solar for them, and then retirement villages and commercial buildings. We've done roughly about 15 megawatts in that sphere. Then we moved over, Matt and I sat down, and we thought there's a big gap in the market for quality product for the residential market. There's a lot of guys, companies, small little companies that gone into the residential, but they don't have the backing. I went over to China to go and to find a proper product. We came across Alpha that we punted, that you can see behind me. That is a lithium battery, a guaranteed product that the consumer or the customer of the residential market can use. We even have the aspect that we even fund it, that you can even rent it from us. And so you get the whole package turnkey out of Solec.
And I think it's quite an important differential. We were looking at quite a lot of the questions that were coming through. The focus of this particular webinar relates to residential property, not so much around the industrial side of things. Rain, I mean, we obviously spend a lot of time reading the news and we're looking at what's happening at Eskom. And I mean, you actually shared a very fascinating article the other day about the feedback from Andre de Ruyter, and it's really encouraging to hear some of his views on what's happening in terms of bringing solar onto the grid, bringing additional capacity on. And one of his quotes that was quite interesting was, actually, you've got to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think we've become so ingrained in complaining about the insecurity on the electrical grid. We're just accepting load shedding. We're just accepting the fact that there are faults hitting us left, right, and centre. I think anybody who's anywhere in South Africa over the last couple of weeks has seen the electrical infrastructure washed away. I mean, looking at that article that looked at Eskom, I mean, what were some of your key takeaways out of it?
Of the article and a few others I read, our grid or our capacity of production is about 46 gigawatts for South Africa. And as we know, we export to our neighboring countries. So we have 46 gigawatts. Of that 46, 11 gigawatts of that is not, or it's under maintenance. It's not reliable. It can go down at every time. They are servicing another 5 gigawatts. That leaves, as the rate says, 16 gigawatts of power that needs to be put into place by 2030. The reason is that 11 gigawatts of power is getting decommissioned by 2030. That doesn't mean at 2030, it's till 2030. So it could be tomorrow, it could be next year. So it is quite scary how bad our grid is looking at the moment. On that, for a solution or to solve the problem, it's up to the Department of Mineral and Resources to procure new power. It's not only up to Eskom. Eskom can only ask them and say, I need more power. I need to build new power stations. To go coal and nuclear, that's 10 to 15 years, so that won't work. So you have to go the either wind, solar, or natural gas. So we are punting, of course, solar. It's quick. You can get a system installed quite quickly. just to touch on the load shedding. In 2018, we had 15 days of load shedding. We thought that was really bad. 2019, we had 36. In 2020, we had 52 days of load shedding. And we were in lockdown. Some of our mines and factories weren't working because of lockdown. So it doesn't, it's not a nice picture at the moment. Also the Eskom power, they were granted, I think yesterday or this week, that they're getting a 10.95% increase approved by NERSA. So that's going to come through in April. So to build these plants, either wind, solar, or natural gas, they need money. And the only way they're going to get it is from us. As we know, our government, there is not excess funds available.
And I think what we really are seeing, and maybe just give us some anecdotal feedback, when you're talking to your clients, I mean, is solar the solution that they're going toward in terms of residential installations? Is it, can you see a genuine shift toward implementation of solar solutions?
Yes, we're definitely seeing the shift. People are tired of load shedding. If it's a little SME, the company goes down, they sit for 2 hours with 5 or 6 staff, they don't work. If it's a house, nothing can work in your house. It's usually at the terrible hours of either in the morning or evening when you want to cook. So yes, people are definitely veering to the solar solution.
And this is the quote that we mentioned. People need to become part of the solution by installing solar solutions or by generators to supplement Eskom power. This was Chris Yelland, who's an energy industry expert. You'll see him regularly quoted in the media. He's got excellent insights around what's happening in the industry. And really that's the crux of what we're trying to cover today, is how you become part of the solution. And maybe the starting point for us is going to be looking at, what are your first considerations when you think about putting a solar solution into your property. Solec are excellent. They've got a great tool that you're able to look at and actually do some online sizing to work out what your investment needs to be. And our starting point is going to be to let Matthew take us through what that tool looks like and some of the input variables that you need to consider before putting them on, before going and applying a solar solution. Matthew, do you want to pull up your screen and run the participants through that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so like you say, our customers struggle finding the right sizing for their system, and there's many things you need to consider when deciding how many panels and batteries to put in your system. So this tool we've developed to answer those two key questions: how many panels and how many batteries. And we look at 7 considerations when we come to a decision in that. We look at what the person is currently spending on their electricity, how much they're paying per kilowatt for that electricity, their pattern and habits of how they use electricity, how much of the electricity gets used during the day and how much at night. Then whether they are a single phase connection or a 3-phase connection to the grid. And then one of the most important ones is budget. I mean, you can have an endless budget when putting in a solar system. And then linked to that is whether you want to be grid tied or off grid. Just a side note on that is our view is that anyone who has the ability to connect to the grid should remain connected to the grid and supplement the production from their solar system. It's far cheaper than deciding to go off grid. And then the last factor to consider is whether you can push power back into the grid. So if I just take you through our tool, you can find it on our website, the menu at the top, sizing tool. There's this toggle that you can turn on and off at the top here, which gives you guidance if you're getting a bit lost and you need some help. So I'm going to turn it off for the explanation here. So in this scenario here, I've got an individual who's spending 2,000 Rand on their electricity bill. They consume 35% of their electricity during the day, and they pay 2.40 Rand for their electricity. We've seen that that's a good average for Tshwane and Joburg for someone who's spending about 2,000 Rand. To work that number out, you just take your electricity bill, take the Rand value on the front, on the back is typically your consumption in kilowatts, divide the Rands by the kilowatts, and you get a Rand per kilowatt hour. Once you've put in those 3 factors, you get your monthly average consumption. So in this scenario, 833 kilowatt hours in a month. We also display a daily number. Then you move on to the sizing of your system that we're going to now play around with and see how that affects the results. You got to just toggle between single phase or 3-phase, and we've customized these specifically to the 2 inverters that we provide. For single phase, we have a 5 kilowatt inverter, and for 3-phase, we have a 10 kilowatt. And obviously those inverters have parameters of how many panels and batteries you can size to those inverters. So I'm just going to, for display purposes, I'm going to go through a single phase connection. Then you can slide this bar back and forth for the number of panels. In this scenario, we've got 5 kilowatts of panels. That's 5,000 watts. One panel is anything from 300 watts to 600 watts. The newer panels are sized at 600 watts. So 5 kilowatts is around 12 to 14 panels. Then on the battery side, you can also toggle back and forth on how many batteries you want to put in your system. And obviously, this is one of the biggest budget drivers. It's the most expensive part of your system, but it's what services your night load. And a typical household will use most of the electricity at night, and your panels can't supply that power, that you need to store that power in your battery. So this is a key driver of the cost of the system. Okay, so once you've completed step 1 and 2, you get your results in step 3. And that's now where you consider your budget and what you're trying to achieve with your system. So in this scenario, this person is 68% off grid, meaning 68% of their consumption is serviced by their solar system. And they've got 22% PV unused. And what could be seen as PV that could be pushed back into the grid. So if you have the ability to push back into the grid, which very few people in South Africa do, you can make money off that. But at the moment, it's a very negligible number that you would get paid back by your municipality to push back into your grid. You also need a different meter, a bi-directional meter.
Correct.
So most people don't go there. So you're kind of overspending on your system by over-paneling too much. Now, in this scenario, you could panel to 6.5 kilowatts. You got 40% of your solar is unused. Then we spit out an answer, which is the cost of the system. So in this scenario, 166,000 Rand to buy the system outright. You can elect to pay, as Rain said, we've got a rental option. The system would cost 2,618 Rand a month, and with an upfront payment of 24,000 Rand. And we estimate that you'll save about 1,355 Rand on your electricity bill. So now this customer can then start playing around with the sliders. And you can say, okay, 166 Rand is, a bit out of my budget. Let me put a smaller battery in. And now it's come down to 143,000 Rand, but he's also got too many panels. He doesn't have enough battery to store that power in, so he can also reduce his panels. And we recommend going to around 10% over paneling. So in this scenario, this is probably the best we can do for this customer. He's 55% off grid. He's 9% over paneled, and his system cost him 130,000 Rand, and he's saving just over 1,000 Rand on his bill. Alternatively, you could say, I'm going to change the way I use my power, and you can say, a lot of the appliances in my house I'm going to turn on during the day, during sun hours, let them get run by my solar system, and you can maybe change his usage to 50% in the day and 50% at night. And then he doesn't have enough solar currently installed, so you can ramp this up maybe to 4.5. He's 10% over panel, then he's now 70% off grid, saving 1,400 Rand a month. So the customer must just play around here and find what works for his budget, and considers all those variables.
Excellent, thanks. I see there's some very active discussions going on in the chat at the moment. As said, the Solec team do have some people monitoring that chat facility, and they'll be able to answer your technical questions on the fly as well. Rain, maybe one of the questions that we could probably unpack a bit further is, is solar actually a solution to take you right off the grid? If you look at what Matt has put up there, you can see that there's a saving, there's the opportunity to trade-offs of different systems. But can you genuinely use solar to take you off the grid?
Yes, you can. If you want to spend that extra over amount to take you 95% of the grid, you're going to be in for a single 3-bedroom house, single phase. You're at about 195 to 200,000. To go completely off the grid, and that's to take the spikes. The spikes, what I mean is your kettle when it starts up, your pool pump, those spikes, just to take that extra little 5%, you're going to spend another 100 to 150,000 Rand just to do that little bit. So I don't see it feasible to go completely off the grid. It's a complete luxury. It's a nice thing to say around the braai, but that amount of money, I find you're wasting money. Rather go 95% of the grid. When load shedding comes, your batteries will take over everything except maybe your pool pump. A pool pump is not essential. If your pool pump doesn't run for 2 hours, your pool's not going to turn green.
I think another thing to consider is like the period we've had just right now. The last 2 weeks have been quite cloudy. You got to over panel your system for events like that you can remain with a connection.
Or you got to have a generator, because if we had a whole week of cloudy, there's no ways you're going to produce enough to run your whole house if you're going off grid.
So, I mean, this really leads into the next question that we received a couple of different variances of it. But I mean, the question that came in was, you know, when you're going around choosing a solar solution, and we touched on this in the previous webinar, where people were asking about, you know, what are the regulations in place? How does somebody know that the people that they're actually working with are actually accredited or able to go and implement solar solutions and do it in a safe and secure manner?
So we, on our website, we're going to have, it will be uploaded soon, or you can get it on the site. We've got 10 factors to consider when you're going with a solar solution or a solar installer. And it's a 10-point checklist. You just got to go through it. I'm just going to point out 3 or 4 of them that you must really look at. Verify the business performance. Don't go with a fly-by-night, somebody at Gmail who's not VAT registered. They can't uphold their warranties and guarantees. Just look at that. A credible company that they got the backings and they got that they can actually bring through the warranty if something does break. A cost breakdown of the system. I mustn't just say one solar system. You don't know what you're getting. So it must be a complete breakdown. And when you get it, compare apples with apples. The product must also be NFS approved, that it can grid tied to our grid. Site assessment and plan. If it's not Solec, another company must do a full site assessment, fly a drone, do a helioscope to get the production of the solar system, that you can see what your system is going to yield. Doesn't help putting a lot of solar panels on your southern roof. You're not going to produce that many. And then also the guarantees, as I mentioned, that you get a proper guarantee on your battery and your inverter.
Great, and what we're going to say, and as mentioned, we are going to circulate a link to this guide that'll be able to give you some other background information that you'll be able to work with. So please keep the questions coming, and if there's anything that's not answered there, you're welcome to submit your questions via the Q&A facility. I see that there's quite a lot of activity happening there, and that's excellent. In terms of Eskom tariff resources, this was actually one of the things we had some fun with when we were doing prep for this particular webinar. I mean, one of the questions was, how does anybody actually find out what regulations are published? What does it cost? Where do you actually find out the cost of electricity in South Africa? And we started looking around at what resources are actually out there. Right, Matt, have you got some ideas or points of reference for people to look at where they're looking for tariffs?
Yeah, we've also looked around and we can't find one resource that takes all those tariffs and puts them together that's easily understandable. In the past, when we've needed to look up tariffs, we've had to go to our municipal website. So in Tshwane, we go to the Tshwane's website, and under tariffs, there's the promulgated tariffs that have been gazetted. And it's a very detailed document, and it gets quite complicated. It's similar to your tax tables, where it's increases, you pay more for the more you use, and it's quite a complicated formula. So it's very difficult to kind of take your bill and see whether you were charged the correct tariff, because it's quite a difficult formula to apply. But yeah, currently I wish someone would put something together like that.
I maybe just want to segue. I know that this will come into part of the follow-up question around this, but it is a question that's come up once or twice in the chat facility as well. But you know, we talk using Matt's tool. We were looking at the saving that comes through from a monthly saving perspective. But you know, surely you have to pay off the solar system before you can actually recognize saving on your monthly bill. Do you think that's a fair comment? And how would you respond to a client that puts that to you?
So it's a very difficult. You can answer that question in many ways, and we've tried to analyze, looking at how much you're investing in your system and what you're paying per kilowatt, and we've put a little tool together that can kind of dumb it down a bit and kind of bring it down to how you get charged by Eskom. So let me just share my screen again.
Go for it.
Okay, so we've taken again a scenario of someone who's paying R2.40 per kilowatt hour to their municipality for their electricity consumption. In this scenario, I've taken someone who spends 2,500 Rand a month. If they take one of our solar solutions, our batteries have a depth of discharge of 90%, and they can cycle anything between 8,000 and 10,000 cycles. That gives them a life expectancy of, if they cycle once a year, it's over 20 years. If they cycle twice a day, it's 10 years or more. So I've just taken a life expectancy of these batteries of 12 years. The panels also have a warranty of 25 years that they'll still produce what they say they will. So worst case scenario, I'm saying that this solution that we put together is going to last 12 years. It's going to cost you 162,000 Rand. If you look at the sizing of that system, it's going to produce 7,490 kilowatt hours in a year, and over its life expectancy of that conservative 12 years, 89,878 kilowatt hours. If you take the cost of your system divided by those kilowatts, you're paying R1.80 per kilowatt hour. Now, it's a key thing to consider that if you're buying a cheap solar system that has batteries that only cycle 400 times or 4,000 times, you're going to bring down that life expectancy of that system. So in a scenario where maybe those batteries are only going to last 4 years, you're then investing in a system maybe at this price that's going to cost you R5.41 to produce for your power, and it just doesn't make sense then to go off grid. So you can play around with this kind of formula, put in what you're paying for your system, put in what life expectancy you think you're going to get from it, and then you can then compare what you're paying to Eskom against what you're paying here. Other things to consider though is that the tariff that you're paying to Eskom is escalating at the moment at 11%. It's going up in April, while your power that you generate is going to be at that rate for the lifetime of your system. I obviously haven't taken into the time value of money here. That maybe also needs to be considered if you need to possibly borrow the 162,000 Rand.
And I think the one thing that jumped out at me when we were looking at this example earlier in the prep session was, while we're looking at the average domestic tariff being R2.40 at the moment, I mean, the reality is just putting in an inflation-linked increase, double-digit increases from both Eskom, City of Joburg, City Power. I mean, the reality is that the cost of electricity is going to go up. And it becomes a trade-off in terms of your investment in solar is a fixed cost as opposed to kind of an open-ended liability that's likely to play out with Eskom increases. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
And then, I mean, we talk about this time value of money, but also, the ability to keep yourself online in terms of, I look at my wife, she has medication that sits in the fridge. I mean, I know that we have food and running a small business, all these things that are available and online. If you don't have a regular supply of electricity, there are these intangibles that end up weighing on you that don't just simply fit into a simple Excel spreadsheet. There are quite a lot of other considerations that come through. I just want to also just check there. I mean, there were some questions that came in here, and I know the guys are furiously responding to them as they're coming along. But I mean, in terms of these investment costs, I mean, do you install a secondary DB for every DB split for critical loads for battery consumption? And are there any energy audit tools that you can recommend for looking into an FAG 3-phase monitor to use in the system?
The first one is, we do split your DB to essentials and non-essentials. Essential will be your lights, plugs, TV, internet, that type of thing. Non-essential will be aircon, stove, geysers. But that still gets powered when grid is on. And a lot of people don't understand that. So when the grid is on, the solar will supplement all your non-essentials. But when the grid goes down, i.e. load shedding, those appliances will not run. But as I said, most of your stuff, you can still carry on with the internet work and carry on with your normal life.
And then we saw a couple of variances on this particular question as well. I mean, how's bad weather affect your solar system? I mean, I think we've been incredibly topical for the last couple of weeks, where we can't even remember what the sunshine looks like. I mean, what's the impact of bad weather on solar systems and considerations that people need to have?
Yeah. So bad weather is not great for solar. It does hamper it quite considerably. If there's no sun or no radiant energy, your solar panels will not work to its capacity at all. So it does affect it quite substantially. That's why we say don't go 100% off the grid, go 90%. So those days when it is either raining, that you can at least have the grid to power that at 5 to 10%.
I'm going to throw it open to general. Those are the pre-submitted questions that we've worked through. There have been a number of questions coming through via the Q&A facility. I am also just going to take a look at the chat facility and see if we can answer some of these for those who haven't been tracking the Q&A. What about inverter technical support? Have you got technical support for the inverters?
So we import directly our systems, the Alpha products, so we have direct contact with the R&D and their technical supply or technical team. Our longest downtime has been 24 hours, and that was on New Year's night. We exchanged it on the 1st of January. Most of the times, if it goes down, we log on remotely, the Alpha team and us, and we usually rectify it from in our office. Sometimes when we have to go to site, we'll fix it immediately, and we always take an inverter with us.
Looking at some of the questions, I mean, maybe one of the things a lot of people don't necessarily consider from an investment perspective is that it's not simply the panels, it's the battery and storage, etc. Do you want to just run people through the three main components that people need to consider when they're putting in a solution?
Yes, actually, let me just log into our system. I'm going to share my screen. So if you buy an Alpha system, you'll get a login details like that. I'm just going to switch off everything except your load. So that's a typical house, the load that gets run from 12 at night till 12 in the next day. So if you bring PV in, and I'm going to switch it on, you'll see that your typical PV curve, if it's sized correctly. So all the blue behind the orange will get consumed by the PV, and that will take you, as everybody knows, off the grid. If you bring a battery also into play, which I'll put the battery on, is the green, and that will also charge during the PV. As you can see, that it's ramping up to 100%, and that will also take you off at night. So when we put the grid consumption back on, this client, John Doe, he doesn't let his battery discharge when he's cooking. He only lets it go down at 8 o'clock, and you can see it discharge in the next morning at discharge. He's very conservative. He keeps almost 55% of his battery for load shedding purposes. We recommend 30. So he would have gone literally till tomorrow, till the sun comes up, and he would have been, as we said, 95% off the grid. These two big spikes over here and here is his geyser. So if you do load shift these geysers into the PV range, that will also help you. So my technical team does advise you on what you must do with your loads. Like chest freezers, we've made most of our clients sell them on Facebook Marketplace because they don't pay.
So that's kind of just you proving that how important the batteries are to your system. A residential home that, the kids are at school and the parents are at work during the day, they consume most of their power at night. So it's going to be very pointless putting just solar in. It's crucial that you put those batteries into the system. And coming back to your question, Mark, just, from my experience, I'm not on the technical side of things, but you see a lot of these systems that they combine 10 different things into the system, and you need to know how all these things fit together. And like you say, what are the components that you put in? And that's why we've loved this product from Alpha, is that I compare it to like buying a laptop. You don't buy a laptop in parts and have to connect them via USB cables. It's all in one box, and it does it works within its parameters, and it does a job. You don't need to know how all the parts fit together. The same with the Alpha system it's all in one box. Whatever you need is in that system, and they don't then start selling you other parts that you need to include in it. But obviously it's got its limitations. It can service a customer that fits into a certain bracket. If you are a large farm that needs a lot of power, then it might be more suitable to go with a large Victron system, or where you need to start looking at the different components.
Correct.
And I think just looking at these tools, it does demonstrate, when we look back at question 2 that came up earlier, what's the difference between almost a back of a bucky installer versus a certified installer that's got tools that can actually be a partner to you. I mean, we talk about this being an investment. The point is that there should be something that you can actually make an informed decision, and using tools like this does give you the chance to make an informed decision about how best to deploy your battery and your savings over a period of time. And you can actually work smartly in terms of implementing a solar solution. Go ahead, Ren.
Yeah, so even our tool, if you want to put in your tariffs, this person hasn't, and it actually works out how quickly your system will pay back to you. This client hasn't filled in these tariffs, but we can also help you to fill in the tariffs you want, and it will show you your payback time on it.
There's a fun question. There's definitely some entrepreneurs in the Q&A as well, but there's a fun question. Can I store power and sell it back onto the grid?
It's coming. Not yet. South Africa, it's called a future city, virtual city. At the moment, South Africa doesn't allow it. There's quite a few towns and cities around the world that does do that you can supplement and sell your power back. And there'll be 2 tariffs, time of use tariffs and your battery tariff. But we need smart meters and all that. But at the moment, no, you can't.
In Tshwane, on the gazetted tariffs, they do refer to a rate of 10 cents per kilowatt. I mean, we're paying R2.40 per kilowatt, and they say they will buy back your power at 10 cents, but upon approval of your application. And I think your application goes into a black hole, and we don't know anyone who's actually been successful in getting that. And it would be pointless doing it anyway. Currently, hopefully, they realize that they need people to push back into the grid to supplement the grid. So if they push up that rate and they put in place processes to process applications, it's going to be a different picture.
On that point, on the application of Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, Joburg, especially Cape Town, those systems are in place. They're not 100% there, but they're getting there. Tshwane is a little bit behind, but the SSGs, what they're called, they are coming into place. So please make sure your installer is accredited, has an engineer, can sign it all off. Otherwise, you will not get your application approved in the future.
I know this is contentious, but I've seen a couple of the questions popping up around it. Is this idea that you may be charged for generating your own power or using solar solutions? I know that there hasn't been any real clarity, but it was making the rounds in terms of news headlines last week. It seems counterintuitive for Eskom CEO to be talking about the fact that they need solar as part of the solution, and then on the other hand to see news headlines saying that we can expect to be charged for generating solar power. Have you got any clarity around that or any comments?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The rater did say we're going to start charging the solar usage, and then a week later he said I'm increasing the 1 megawatt cap for a license to 50 megawatt cap. So there's definitely, I think, in-house fighting there. But people must understand that solar usage is actually time-based, what they want to bring in. So if you have a battery, that cancels it out. So your time-based in the morning and the evening, the peak loads, your battery. So you'll charge maybe your battery between 12 at night and 3 in the morning and discharge it between 6 and 9. So whatever comes out, it's not gazetted yet, and it's going to take them a long time. As we know, this is not going to be in the next year or so.
So what they're proposing, Mark, is the result of what they're proposing is that someone that installs solar might not have as much of a benefit as they would currently. They're saying that charging you an increased tariff as the more you use, the more you pay, is not really a reflection of the cost to generate that power. So they want to put in place a fixed fee to have a connection that's a lot higher than currently. So whether you use power or not, you might be paying 500 Rand just to have that connection. In that way, it has a result that having a solar system that might result in you not having any power to pay to Eskom, you might still have to pay 500 Rand a month to have that connection. And the result of that is that you're paying to have a solar system.
But I can't see that happening because your low LSMs can't afford that. So all of them are just going to hot connect their houses. So I really can't see getting that pushed through.
Questions come through here. What happens if something blows in the inverter? Where will it get repaired since they're all made in China, or they're swapped out or repaired locally?
Yeah, as I said before, we swap it out within 24 hours. We got direct contact with China.
And we've got surplus stock.
Our longest time down was 24 hours, and that was on New Year's Eve. So Solec from our side, that's why I said check the guarantees and warranties and how quick they service you or help you out. So yeah, check your installer.
What accreditations do we need to look out for with installers for pushing back to the grid when it comes? Any thoughts on that?
So first, your inverter must be able to. You must look if your inverter can go bi-directional. You need a bi-directional meter, which your municipality will charge you for to install. Your normal pay-as-you-go meter doesn't have that capabilities. It is all coming in. It hasn't been gazetted yet that it can just be for the normal guy on the street. So we're waiting for all that information.
You want to mention maybe the different types of inverters and those that are approved? And
yeah, so there is, you get a list. My technical team, JD, can probably give you all the technical details on where your inverter, you must go on a list to check if the inverter is actually approved in South Africa to that you can install it. So your normal, call them macro builders specials, they're not accredited.
I always worry that, with webinars, when you look at it and you see in terms of engagement levels, but I mean, there's 80 people on this webinar and there's questions are flying in thick and fast. It shows just how interested people really are in this topic at the moment. I'm going to let the teams continue to field some of these questions around the Q&A facility as well. Technical question, I don't know whether this is the appropriate forum. Can you please explain NRS 097 approvals?
So that's the approval on the inverter. So what it means is, or the big aspect of what it means is how quickly it shuts off, pushing back to the grid, that it's not doesn't hurt the grid. So when the grid goes off, how quickly your inverter shuts off and actually just powers your essential load. There's a time limit that is not allowed shutting off over a certain time period.
I've got a prepaid conlog meter. Any changes needed there for a solar system?
So a conlog meter is a very contagious one. It picks up your solar system and shuts off. We give you a contact in conlog themselves. They give you a code, and that makes it that you can have a solar system installed.
There's a question that's come through here, and I think this needs to be taken offline with your sales team, but my problem is a bit more complex. I have no problem with an off-grid solution. My usage is 15% of my account, and I reckon I need to discuss this with an expert if somebody can kindly supply me with contact details. Rain, what's going to be the process for people wanting to be contacted by your sales team? Would you like them to just submit? Would you like them to mail somebody to a specific address, or would you like them to drop the
contact details? You can either mail my two sales guys. The one is jd@solecsa.co.za or louis@solecsa.co.za, or you go on our website. You can go onto the either one of the forms to contact, and one of my guys will contact you if you want to get an indicative quote. We've got an automated instant quote tool, so you can plug in all your details there, size your tool slightly to what you need, and you can get an indicative quote. So if we come out and you don't fall off your chair on the price.
So in that scenario, you'll get emailed your quote with from sales@solecsa.co.za, and then if you want more information, there'll be a phone number you can call on there, or you can reply to that email, and you'll get a phone call back, and we can set up a on-site assessment.
Excellent. So I'm going to allow guys to take those details down, but a couple other questions that have come through here. Do you only use ESS or do you use SunSync? As far as I know, ESS has max load of 4.6 kilowatts, not sure amp, and SunSync has 5.5 kilowatts or 34 amp response.
So we've looked into all of them, SunSync, GrowWatt, all the other brands. The main reason why we're sticking with Alpha is the back end. I can't get access to SunSync. I can't ask their R&D team and their technical team to help me out. I've tried. The Soluna had the same problem. Victron, same problem. You have to go through the team. So we have to swap it out and then maybe boot it up. Where Alpha, I've got first the best guarantees out of all of them. As Matt mentioned, our 5.7 battery has 10,000 cycles. We haven't come across a battery of that nature, and it's immediately swap out from our side, where the other companies do not offer this.
You're obviously going to find better inverters out there, but also what's important is that you're buying the batteries that are compatible with those inverters, and that's often something that novice installers don't necessarily do, and then they run into problems during installation. So we know that Alpha has tested, it's tried and tested that their inverters are fully compatible with their batteries. maybe there's a limitation on during load shedding, but then you just manage your electricity. But I mean, the primary reason you have a solar system is to bring down your electricity costs, and all inverters do that.
Yeah, the other one, something can do use third-party batteries.
Again, we have some entrepreneurs in the Q&A facility, and I'm just going to read this one. Since these costs appear to be quite high, and maybe I'm going to turn this question around a bit, do you run any specials during certain times of the year, in other words, of the peak or discount periods? But also talking a little bit about the rent to own or rental solutions. I mean, maybe just take people through some of the considerations instead of a simple a large capital outlay, but also rental options.
So yeah, I'm just going to quickly touch on. Matt can go to more the FD side and that, but it's quite simple for me. You rent a system which is about 180, 150,000 rand. You're in for about 2,800, 2,500 rand. Your bill is about 2,000, 2,500 rand. You're going to have a net cost renting from us between £1,000 to £1,500. If you're a little SME, I cannot see it why you won't use it. So you have one load shedding a month and your staff will go down. It pays back. So that's why we launched this rental option for SMEs, for the guy who can't afford it, the big capital outlay, as you mentioned, of 180,000 rand, that they can have first a saving, secondly, no load shedding, and we service it and guarantee it.
So we've seen also a lot of guys that are apprehensive of going solar, or maybe they've burnt their fingers on a cheap solar system that no longer works. They like the comfort in knowing that we own the system, and if it breaks, we replace it. We're charging a fee that they have the facility of a solar system for 7 years, and that gives a lot of confidence to those type of customers. Obviously, you're going to be paying slightly more than if you had to borrow the money from a bank or lend against your bond, but there are a few other benefits. For example, every 6 months we come out and just make sure that the system is working optimally. And you've got access to our call center where you can talk to an expert and just find out how to maybe use the app or just check if the system is running correctly.
Question here from Michael. How long's the contract terms, typical contract term for rental option?
7 years. You can buy it out at any point during those 7 years. And then when you get to the end of the 7 years, you pay a nominal fee to buy the system, or you can continue renting on a month-to-month basis. You can upgrade it at that point, and that'll then change your monthly payments. But yeah, 7 years.
And question here, can you explain your concept of time of use?
Time of use is when it will be brought in. Equilen is bringing it already. So you're going to have 12 o'clock at night to 12 o'clock the next day. Between 6 in the morning till 9 at night, they're going to charge you a lot higher rate per kilowatt, and it's the peak times, in other words. And then 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or 4 till 8 o'clock at night, those tariffs are going to be very high. Between 9 in the afternoon or 9 in the morning till about 4, the tariff will come down. Your lowest tariff will be at 12 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning. There's not much consumption. And that's why we say get a battery system or a solar system that you can charge, and you can program to charge from the grid when it is cheap power. So you can discharge it at night to your stove and your oven and stuff like that. Charge it at 12 o'clock till 3, discharge it from 6 till 9 or 6 till 8 when the sun comes up, charge it with the grid, with the solar. So you can really manipulate your system to get the best efficiency out of it, especially when time of use power does come in.
For them to charge that, they need to replace your meter.
Yes, so I have to do a very smart meter to install that, and that's not rolled out yet.
Yeah, so that's going to take councils a long time to get right, and we've seen how they failed in the past implementing smart meters. But obviously, to charge you those different tariffs at different times of use, you need to have a different meter installed.
I think Brett's got a very important question here, considering that we're all now working from home. How quiet are your alpha inverters? Can you run them in your house? I study in the study or my office.
So yes, that is a big problem. I just moved house and it had a solar system in. Sounds like a jet engine goes off every time it needs to cool down. That's a mechanically cooled inverter. Ours are heatsink cooled, so there's no working parts, no fans, no nothing. So you don't hear it at all. In the back of this room is our actual inverter. You don't hear it. It's completely silent. So yeah, there is no noise whatsoever. We've actually installed it about a month ago in a guy's living room.
Do you also service or do maintenance on systems that are bought or only on rented systems?
Yes, we do services at a nominal fee that we come out when you want us to.
Concept of time-based tariffs in South Africa, do they exist?
Not yet. For commercial, yes. Sorry, residential, no. Commercial, yes.
And then just to follow up on the time of use question, does the concept time of use apply when you're a prepaid user?
Yes, that's when they're going to bring it in. They're going to definitely bring it through a prepaid system.
All right, so it looks like those are the majority of the questions that have come through. Louis, JD, I know you guys are still, I can see you guys are still typing some responses to client queries that are coming through there, and it's great to see that there is interaction happening there. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes just to finish up from on that side. Rain, do you want to maybe give some closing comments about benefits of solar and where you kind of see the industry going and the opportunities over the next kind of 12 months?
Yeah, so just as we mentioned before, I mentioned before, just do your homework, just do apples with apples. We've seen a lot of quotes that we asked customers that they had to compare with, and we will give you our honest advice. If your house is too big and it's a single phase, maybe our system's not custom for you, but just get the right advice. My JD and Lou are honest guys. They'll give you, say, sorry, listen, yeah, you need a bigger system, maybe go with the other company. But if your house is a 3-bedroom house, just get the right system, and that the guarantees are there that you don't burn your fingers.
Yeah, I think just coming back to the topic of today is that the key drivers that make the decision of whether a solar system is feasible or not come from price and reliability of supply. And both those are coming from Eskom. We know where Eskom is right now. Prices are only going up and their grid is becoming more and more unstable. So we don't foresee that the feasibility of solar is going to change in the future. It's only going to become more and more relevant.
Ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned it earlier, but it really does say something. I mean, we become almost overwhelmed with webinars that are out there at the moment, but the fact that there are still 75 people that are sitting and interacting with the team shows just what a topical discussion this is at the moment, how important it is to be able to find solutions for this. And you know, we started this off with saying being part of the solution, not the problem. I think there are many reasons to be pessimists, and it's easier to be a pessimist than an optimist, but there really are very viable solutions that are out there. We will be circulating a playback facility. The team will also be circulating the Solec booklet, and we look forward to engaging with you and sharing some further information. We will be doing follow-up sessions like this to be able to answer your questions. And please keep an eye on your email for this supporting information. Thank you to everybody for attending and look forward to engaging with you.